We find out who we are and what we're made of through the things we produce. To me, as an artist, those works have always surprised me because I've spent too many years in that all familiar battleground. An act of creative warfare, having the inspired vision and then finding myself banging my head against the wall, leaning into the creative flow and immediately stepping back and doubting the process. Learning things but never being able to tap into something real, something meaningful, and something that really felt like me. All artists go through this phase where we act like amateurs running around with our hearts lit on fire. But there's a secret that real artists know and wannabe artists struggle with consistently. And the secret is this. The fear of success is the biggest fear, because when we embrace this idea that we have talent, a meaningful ability to connect with people beyond ourselves through something that we create and put out into the world, it is a really scary thing, because if it's true, the onus is on us. As an artist myself, I'm going to bring you along today as I finish a painting that I'm really stuck on. And as I move along, I'm going to be chatting about things that are on my mind, things that I'm getting hung up on. And throughout the process, what I would really encourage you to do is what I'm about to do myself. Ask yourself what your biggest fear is, and that's where you begin. Because once you start, once you're in that creative flow, unseen forces come to your aid. Things that were once impossible and stuck become possible and fluid. Once we realize that we are the biggest thing getting in our own way, once we acknowledge that we are our own biggest enemy, that voice inside of ourselves about the thing that we're creating, that this isn't good enough and it won't matter to people, begins to be replaced, and a piece that feels stuck finds new momentum. My goal today is for you to feel as you are a friend in my studio. This isn't a scripted solution to creative warfare. It's simply an artist in the thick of it, sharing the journey of the messy middle.
I think most creative people aren't fighting a lack of talent. I think they're fighting themselves. I know I am. The fear of being seen, the fear of wasting their potential, the fear that maybe they really could do something extraordinary, and what that would demand from them if it were true. Because once you stop pretending that you don't care, once you stop downplaying the thing you really want, everything changes.
What I envision for this piece to be complete is going to require a lot of letting go. This painting is a childhood memory. It is a place that is near and dear to my heart, and I think that's where a lot of the pressure I've built up inside of my mind resides. I've gotten the base done, but I've paused because the pressure to make sure that it comes across as my heart wants it to feel has become so immense, I've kind of just gotten stuck. And don't we all get stuck when things start to really matter to us? If I close my eyes, I can be in this bay on a kayak with my husband in a kayak beside me. This is a beautiful bay alongside my family's float cabin on a lake that I grew up on. This bay off in the distance holds a river that goes to another lake, and it is the most beautiful, beautiful spot.
Resistance is strange because it rarely appears around the things we don't care about. It shows up at the edge of meaningful work. The second something has potential to change us, expose us, or become important, resistance enters the room. Suddenly, we're tired, distracted, doubting ourselves, reorganizing supplies instead of beginning. I don't think resistance is evidence that we're incapable. I think it's often evidence that we're standing near something deeply important. The projects that matter the most tend to awaken the greatest internal friction because meaningful work asks something from us in return. Presence, vulnerability, persistence, and a willingness to continue before we know how things will turn out. Ego has a way of disguising itself as caution, intelligence, or discernment when really it's often fear trying to protect us from discomfort. Our ego wants certainty before movement. It wants reassurance that the thing we create will be admired, validated, or successful before we fully commit to making it. But creativity doesn't usually operate through guarantees. The more I try to dominate a painting, force the outcome, or prove something through it, the worse it becomes. Creativity seems to respond much better to listening than controlling. Perfectionism convinces us that if we could just get things exactly right, we'd finally feel safe enough to share ourselves honestly. But perfectionism doesn't create freedom, it creates paralysis. The pressure to make something flawless often suffocates the life out of it completely, especially when a piece carries emotional meaning, memory, or identity. in this case, my painting, for me. Suddenly, every brushstroke feels loaded. Every decision feels permanent. And instead of responding naturally, we begin hesitating, correcting, overworking, tightening our grip. But the truth is, the things that move most people are rarely perfect. They're alive. They carry evidence of risk, uncertainty, humanity, and movement.
I kind of hate it, but this is normal. Let me fix this. I think there is a point at any given day where if you keep going, it's going to make it worse. But I also think that's something that we tell ourselves. In previous years, I would have stepped away at this point, but the fact of the matter is that I'm done waiting for this to kind of feel right. And I think a lot of what we get hung up on as artists or any creation that you're putting out into the world is that you feel like the timing needs to be right, the circumstances need to be right, you need to feel like you're in a great mood about whatever it is that you're doing, and realistically, no, you don't always. The suffering in it, the struggle in it is part of it also, and if you're only ever painting or creating when things feel aligned, then you're missing out on the entire opportunity of the depth and the nuance of the human experience that you're feeling while creating it, that other people who are interested in your art, who come to you to be inspired and uplifted or to purchase a piece that you've created, those people want the missing piece. They don't want the perfect life and the perfect presentation when you're only in a perfect mood. They want the depth. And so I have to keep going. But I just wanted to pause to say that if you are in the suck and it feels like you hate the thing that you're creating, I think this is all too familiar a feeling, and I'm feeling it too. I have a lot of ideas around what I want this whole piece of forest to be. I want it to have depth, and I want it to be a very curious place for your mind to kind of linger, and right now it's just a mess. It's just a mess, and I'm just gonna keep on going. So here's to the messy middle. I just feel so tense, and everything inside of me wants to just get onto the other side of it. But there is beauty in the tension. There is beauty in the tension, right? There is beauty in the tension. No, I hate the tension. I'm gonna suck through it anyway.
Self-sabotage often happens at the moment something starts becoming real. Not when we're dreaming about it, but when we're close enough for possibility to feel dangerous. That's when we restart projects, over-edit, abandon ideas too early, or convince ourselves we suddenly need more time, more skill, more preparation. I think unfinished potential can feel emotionally safer than discerning the limits of our real capabilities. Because once we genuinely try, we risk finding out who we are, but we also risk discovering that we're far more capable than we've allowed ourselves to believe.
It's nighttime. I've busted out my coziest knits and my sweatpants, and if you hear cartoons in the background, it's because my family is here. I spent the last 2 hours in this tree line, and I hate it. And this is the part that nobody talks about. It is incredibly frustrating because I've spent all this time, I have the vision still, it's still there, and yet this frustration wants to hook me up. I'm not gonna let it, I'm going to keep going, but I think it can be so easy to get caught up in what we've done wrong that it just kind of stops us from gaining any momentum into the next thing. If I had gone back 20 minutes before I just finished doing these trees, I think it was at a perfect sweet spot, but I've just added too much sky, and so now I need to take it down a notch. Ah! It is day 2, and no, this is not my painting that I was working on, although this morning it was a little too quiet, and we have 2 girls who are 3.5 and 1.5, and when the house is too quiet, it generally means someone's up to no good. And this morning, our youngest daughter so beautifully decided to add to my painting. So I had to sidestep and create a little bit of a creative outlet for them so that they could get their wiggles out so that I could get back onto my painting. But I do need to address the piece that she's added. And until then, let's move this one out of the way.
Avoidance is one of the easiest traps to fall into because it can look incredibly productive from the outside. researching, planning, consuming inspiration, learning techniques, waiting for clarity. But eventually, there comes a point where gathering information becomes a way of postponing vulnerability. We tell ourselves we're preparing when we're really delaying the moment we have to confront uncertainty directly. Creativity doesn't usually reward overthinking. Most breakthroughs arrive through movement, through making the wrong mark, through continuing while unsure. Clarity rarely arrives before action. More often, action is what actually creates the clarity. Meaning has a funny way of making creativity heavier. The more emotionally attached we are to something, the more pressure we place on ourselves to do it justice. This painting became difficult for me because the place it represents matters deeply to me. And I think people experience this in every area of life, not just art. The more something matters, the more afraid we become of mishandling it. So instead of responding freely, we start to protect the outcome. But meaning can't always survive under pressure. Sometimes the need to make something important actually prevents us from approaching it honestly enough for real depth to emerge. Creative identity becomes dangerous when the work stops being exploration and starts becoming proof. Proof that we're talented enough, original enough, worthy enough, capable enough. And once creation becomes tied to our identity, fear enters the process in a completely different way. Suddenly, failure feels personal. But I think creativity and our identity around it becomes healthier when we stop asking the work to define us and instead allow it to reveal us gradually over time.
It was late last night that my husband and I were staring at this piece, and I was telling him all the things that were wrong with it. And after hearing me out, he says, "Well, that's good then, because you're almost on the other side." Because this happens, like you get so caught up in the details that you forget that you do have the capacity to pull through. And sometimes you need to disappear into that creative thought process and let go enough that your intuition kind of takes over a little bit more than your need for control. The biggest part that I forgot about was a source of light, which is just kind of bananas. I was realizing that everything was the same shade of like dark, no man's land time of day. And to give it a clock, to give it a sunrise and have it be a specific time of day, let me find the light and bounce it around the piece. And that has given it a whole new breath of fresh air. I've just started putting little kisses of sun on the tops of trees and over here in these branches and on the rock faces. And what I'm about to do is take that same shade that I've established as a sunshiny sort of element and integrate it into the waves here. I feel like that's one of the finishing touches, but we will see. But my husband was right. I was almost there.
I think many people stay stuck not because they lack ability, but because they understand consciously or unconsciously that becoming who they want to become would require their entire life to change. Allowing the work to emerge requires a completely different energy than forcing it into existence. Some of the strongest creative moments I've ever experienced happened immediately after I stopped gripping so tightly. After I stopped trying to impress myself. After I stopped demanding certainty before continuing. There's something almost mysterious about creativity in that way. The work often already knows what it wants to become long before we consciously understand it ourselves. So here it is, a memory of mine, so meaningful, captured and put out into the world for all of you to enjoy. I hope it inspires and uplifts you to plug into your own creativity, to let go of gripping so tightly and find the thing that you were meant to create.